Founder Wisdom Pod slash Coaching Wisdom Pod,
Great.
because we have both today with Angela. Kristen Taylor is with us today. She is founder at Productive Flow. She's founded a bunch of companies, started in the real estate world. I am Charles Cormier, your host, CEO of podbuyer.com. If you want to start or scale your own podcast, getting insights, amazing guests like Angela, and even clients, that's what you can do with podcasting. And by the way, Angela, we're going to talk about not only productivity today, not only flow, not only trauma, but podcasting, because you're also into podcasting. We're also going to talk about parenting, 5 children. That is a lot. Welcome to the pod. Really glad to have you on. Angela, can you tell us a bit more about yourself and your company?
Yeah, sure. So thank you, Charles, for having me on. So a little bit about me. I was just telling you pre-show, I'm a mom. I have 5 kids. 4 are grown now and out of the house. I've got 1 at home. I homeschooled all 5 kids while running my businesses. I've been a coach, consultant, and trainer for companies and individual entrepreneurs around the world for the last 20 years. And I started out in the real estate industry 30 years ago.
Love it. Fun fact, yesterday I was listening to documentary of rich Atlanta real estate brokers, and specifically these were Black dudes from the hood. So that was kind of interesting. They were riding in Maybachs and Rolls Royce and so forth. And I found that really inspiring, that they were talking about growing up in the hood and now selling $1 million homes, making $1 million plus per year. I started my career serving realtors with Facebook ads. And frankly, I think it's the career that you can make the most money if you're a hustler, quote unquote, if you know the value of work, if you know how to invest the hours. Like the market, I think it's been quite good in the last couple of years. But do you agree with that statement that being a realtor is probably one of the best career out there if you want to make good money somewhat quick, if you're willing to put in the time?
Well, I would say absolutely. Real estate is an extremely lucrative profession, but it's not just putting in the time. It's putting in the time in the right way. And one of the things that I loved about what you had just said about the guys that were like, they grew up in a really hard environment or harsh environment, and then now they're making millions in real estate. One of the things that I've really found is a very correlating factor between any type of entrepreneurship success and this childhood upbringing. A lot of times is that the strong entrepreneurs usually come from a really difficult or traumatic childhood, because there's a certain resilience and drive inside of them that's pushing them forward to really prove themselves and really succeed. And the thing is that there's like an obstacle in that, and that you have to be able to learn how to regulate your nervous system in a way that you're not just flitting around from one thing to the next in utter chaos. You have to be very focused, very determined, and able to put forth strategic effort that's actually going to get you somewhere, and not just try to jump onto everybody's bandwagon that isn't necessarily working for you. So it's really understanding the blocks that stand in the way of how you use your time. I think that really pushes us forward into the highest level of success. But yeah, real estate by far, awesome.
So yeah, these dudes were constantly quoting like The Secret, and books like that. So it's like I've seen self-help being quite popular in realtors. How can I say that nicely? Well, the market in real estate, it's pretty much always growing. I would somewhat qualify it as a big bubble, just everyone agreeing that, like houses are worth something. And probably the American dream, I need a house to feel successful, and a big one. I also think that being a realtor is mostly sales. It's not that complicated, which is why if you like putting the time, I think you can get quite wealthy. I think the best realtors out there, what they do, they take their cash from the commission and they reinvest it in real estate to have this cash flow. And from there, they can start building their empires of business. That's That's what I'd like to see. And I've seen it in probably my top 1% clients back in the days. There were some really rich folks out there. And just for reference, in my native Quebec, if you want to become rich, that's where you go. That's what people do. They become realtors, then they invest in real estate. That's the definition of how you get rich in Quebec. By the way, getting rich in Quebec is this taboo, right? Like people are we call it small bread there, or you guys call it like cutting the tallest blade grass syndrome. What do you have to say about that and false beliefs about money?
False beliefs about money. Oof. I found that a lot of times when it comes to these, the childhood experiences, right? The childhood experiences, they're going to determine our path forward. Like I was saying, like this desire to prove ourselves and things like this. But a lot of times it shows up sometimes with these blocks around money. And this is why you see like the self-improvement stuff really being very popular in the real estate industry, is because I found, 20 years of working directly with realtors and in the real estate industry, you start to see this correlating pattern of real estate agents. People have chosen that career and childhood experiences where they left childhood feeling like, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I don't measure up, or I'm too much. A lot of times it was I'm too much. So where they felt like they were annoying everyone, by just being really high energy, And so what happens is the money beliefs often will tie into their feelings of worthiness and how they feel that other people feel about them, right? So like if you were the kid in school who, maybe you had a lot of friends, but you would go home and you had really busy parents, like parents that just weren't engaged or didn't pay attention to you. A lot of times we don't realize that childhood trauma can be small things like that. We think about like big abuse or, being beaten or, horrible factors of abuse. And it doesn't have to be that to create experiences of trauma. And so what happens though is that if you grow up feeling like nobody pays attention to you, like the grown-ups, right, don't pay attention to you, that when you have something to say that they take it in one ear and then they don't really listen. So they might not respond at all, or they respond with, yeah, that's great. That's great. I'm busy. I got to go do this. Right. And then what happens is there's this internal belief that's deeply buried in the subconscious that says nobody wants to listen to you. Right? Like you're not heard, you're not seen. And so you'll have this desire to prove yourself, but also this belief that shows up that says nobody cares and nobody's listening. And so that can oftentimes stop real estate agents from showing up and doing the things because they feel like if nobody's listening, then why am I even bothering? Right. And they're not thinking that on a conscious level, but what happens is they'll pull up all this stuff to do instead, like the procrastination and the I need this and I need that and anything to avoid talking to people and actually lead generating. And they'll look for things that are like, the leads are coming to me. While there's certain ways to do that, for sure, you still have to be engaged and lead follow-up, right? And so a lot of times that they'll stop themselves from even doing that, even if they do have leads coming in on autopilot, they won't follow up with them in a way that's actually going to bring in the money because their money beliefs are tied into their feelings of how they feel about themselves and they feel other people feel about them. So it's like, if nobody's listening to me, and nobody cares what I have to say, then how am I supposed to earn any money? Well, I guess I won't, but I'm going to continue to put the effort out there and then not be surprised when the money just doesn't show up, right? So it's like this deep belief that's really affecting them in a very negative way.
I don't know like any humans or adults that have a sane relationship with money in my life, and especially back in the years in which I had my education. I think it's like 95% don't really know what money's true purpose is, let alone what money is. It took me a lot of time to understand the banking system. The main reason behind that is just that this industry operates in pure secrecy. That is their moat. That is how they protect themselves. For example, this year there's been a couple of bank runs, right? So that's exactly what they don't want to happen. Customers freaking out and everyone pulling their money out. So that's why they tend to operate in secrecy. But what I think they should do in this day and age is turn the tables around and go full transparency, full open source. Anyway, I think that in itself leads people not to be able to have a sane relationship with money, or let alone know what to do with their money. At school, they don't teach you how to have or manage money, which is quite ridiculous, right? Like they teach you that 13 times 13 is equal whatever. It's not useful. Calculator can do that, but they don't teach you how to manage the money. And then, like you said, and I've had a couple of coach on this pod, it's like micro traumas, you know, is like it is like hearing your mom say, oh, like, no, we shouldn't spend there, you know, or oh, that's expensive right there. And even when I look at my dear mom that I love nowadays, she goes on shopping sprees, and her excuse is that everything is on discount, you know. Oh, we have this Winners store in Canada, and Winners is like top brands, but at discounts price. But we all know in the end that, you know, there's no discounts, you know, they just put it in your face. And then you have that kind of relationship with money, which is not your friend. It is somewhat a tool to satisfy your pain, but it's not something that you use to grow. It's not something that generates additional energy in your life. And yeah, I think a lot of people are stuck with that. Coming back to realtors, it's one of the hardest profession. That's why people turn to self-help as well. I think, yeah, you can make it with even limited intelligence in that profession, but you need to be a mad hustler, and you need to have a very gritty and solid mindset that is to always when there's $0 in your pipeline, especially when you start, you know, like it can be 2 to 3 months before you receive your first commission check. Once you're getting rolling, but the first month can be really hard. So what do you do if there's $0 in your pipeline and you start to feel that scarcity coming? I don't have enough. What will I do? My rent will bounce, you know. I'll go in the red. Like what do you do when that happens in your mind?
Yeah. So, you know, these are really good points, but I think that, you know, really what it boils down to is if you're starting your business as a real estate agent, it is you starting a business. You didn't join a corporation. You're not getting a paycheck. So you have to be prepared to go for a period of time without having that income. You know, when I first started as a realtor, I started out actually as an investor, and I bought my first house when I was 19. And by the time I was 22, I had 4 homes. I was running 3 of them as rental properties, and then I was living in 1. And so I got my real estate license at 22. And meanwhile, the 2 years prior, from 20 to 22, I was working as a real estate assistant for the top realtor in Orlando, Florida. So I was working with the celebrities' properties and, you know, multi-million-dollar estates and things like this when I'm still a teenager, basically, and just into my early 20s. And then when I got my real estate license, I worked for 3 months before I had a paycheck. And then I closed 3 deals in a week, because it took that time to get me clients, get them under contract, and then have those contracts close. So 3 months till a paycheck, but then 3 closings in 1 week, right? So it's understanding that, like, you have to be realistic about how much time it's going to take you to earn a paycheck. And then it's also understanding that, you know, you've got to have money stored up to be able to start any business and start it without a paycheck, right? So like some people get started in real estate because they have a partner who's bringing income into the house and they don't necessarily need to have that income right away. And that's fine. And then some people come in and say, I'm going to do this part-time while I'm doing this other job, and then I will segue into this full-time. I've seen a lot of people do that, and that works well too. But when you're starting from nothing, and this is where I see some agents will really get stuck right at the beginning, is they say, okay, I'm starting my business real estate. I'm going all in, and I need a paycheck in 30 days or my whole life falls apart. It's like, don't put yourself in that position. You know, just don't, because you're automatically starting off with that scarcity like built in inside of you. And what I'm saying is like, start off where you don't have that scarcity, where you're not setting yourself up to emotionally fail before you even start out of the gate, because then everything is going to be tied to the energy of stress and tension. And that is going to run people in the other direction. But if you're leading with like really positive energy, like, hey, I'm really excited to be in this new business. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be serving these people. I really love what I'm doing. And then you bring that energy into your work, right? And when you bring that energy into your work, now like people are attracted to you, right? You talked about The Secret. It's like, this is attraction at its best. This is manifestation. You have to go into it knowing that you're doing this because it's part of your path. It's part of what is leading you to other things, right? And then to kind of touch back on what you were saying before about money, right? Is that there's a lot of conditioning that we go through as we grow up. And some of the things that you were saying about like your parents might say, oh, well, that's too expensive or whatever. And then as a child, you kind of question, like, what does that mean? If this is too expensive, what does that mean about me, that I don't deserve it? Or I wasn't a good enough kid, or they don't value me enough to buy me something that's this price or whatever, right? And then what happens then is then you take those beliefs around money back into your adulthood. And if you're showing up saying, I got to make money in 30 days or else, or I got to make money in 60 days or else, then you're bringing that energy from your childhood experiences and your conditioning around money and what you spend money on, or how you spend money, or how you use money, right? Or how you use going into debt, right? Because even debt can be strategic, right? And it's understanding how money works and all of this. And like you did, you went in, you're like, I'm going to educate myself. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to learn. I'm going to understand this system, and I'm going to make it work for me, right? And so real estate is the same way. If you educate yourself on the activities and the actions that are going to bring you business, and then you strategically do those things, and you're not focused on the money, you're focused on serving the people that you're working with. So you're focused on, I want to help people, and these people show up. And then because you're doing the work, you're taking the actions, the proven actions that you know are going to work. You're doing those things consistently. You're following up. Then those people are going to be so happy to work with you. You're happy to work with them. And then the money's just there. And you don't have to think about it because you brought the right energy into your work.
Transferring energy. So it's like first you need to create energy in your own garden, whether that's reading books, whether that's self-motivation, boosting yourself up, and then transferring these energy waves, these qubits to the other party is how I would describe it. If you do that, and I mean, that sounds simple in my mind, might not sound simple in someone that starts, but that's your purpose. It's like giving people value. And when you do, then their little glass of water, it overflows. And when it overflows, that is your commission check right there. Podcasting. I want to finish with podcasting. We have 2-3 minutes left. Tell us about your pod. How do you invite great guests? How do you conduct the interviews? Why behind the podcasting? And has it brought you any clients?
Yeah, good questions. Okay, so I actually started getting into podcasting because I had someone reach out to me on LinkedIn and said, I think you'd be a great guest for our podcast. And I'm like, I don't listen to podcasts. I don't know a thing about them. You're going to have to enlighten me. What is this podcast thing, And he said, let's have a call. And we did. And he said, can you do that just on Zoom being recorded? I said, of course. He goes, well, that's all we need to do. Great. So I started doing that, and I realized from that first podcast episode, I made $30,000 from people reaching out to me and then working with me. And I said, well, that's amazing. Let's repeat that. So I started guesting on more podcasts. And after about 3 or 4 years of that, I reached out to my now friend who had gotten me on the first podcast, and he owned a podcast production agency. And so I said, what do you think about me starting a podcast? And he goes, well, let's talk. And so we did. And he's my producer. he got the whole thing all running for me. And one of the things that I really focused in is understanding what makes people productive and what takes away from productivity. And, I found that in my work as a coach that it's the emotional blocks that show up from our childhood experiences, from our past, just in our life experiences, right? That show up and create these blocks around our conditioning or our mindset or whatever. And then we're not focused on what it is that we really want because we don't even know what we really want. We don't even ask ourselves what we want. We're going after something that we think we're supposed to have because it's conditioned. You're supposed to have this, right? You're at this age, now you need this, right? And so without even really questioning what it is that our unique soul wants to do and have in be in this world. And so I started to really focus the podcast around understanding, like choosing guests was about finding people who had overcome a lot of these childhood experiences to become something amazing, So like I had Michael Neal on my podcast. He's written several books. He's like super coach, right? He's got a bunch of stuff with Mind Valley and EverCoach. And I had him on my podcast because I heard him being interviewed on Mind Valley. And he said that they were asking him how he got started being a coach. And he said, I'd love to tell you that it was this amazing, incredible story. He goes, but honestly, I was a suicidal kid trying not to kill myself. And that's how it segued into me being a coach, was I was just sharing what I had learned with other people in that same position. And I was so blown away by that. I reached out to him and got him on my show. And we talked about that. We talked about him being a suicidal kid and how he brought himself out of that situation to make himself a worldwide phenomenon and success, and really understanding how to go after what you want and how to actually receive it. And so that's what I focused on, are people who are doing that work, who are out there building something or serving people who do. And so that's kind of where I focused on it. And I had one episode from a podcast that I made over $100,000 on, and I'm still earning from. And because I still have clients, and they've just been with me now 3 years, right? So, absolutely. And I think if you have a message to share, I think podcasting is a really great way to get your voice heard and to attract the audience that is waiting for you to show up and speak, for sure.
Wow. So there you have it, guys. 30K, 100K. Starting or scaling your own pod or being invited to own podcast can be totally game changing. I can help you do that with podfire.com. Reach out to me if you're interested into that. Angela, where can people find out more about you?
Sure. You can go to AngelaKristenTaylor.com, and that's Kristen with a K at the front and an E at the end. And you can learn all about me. You can see me on LinkedIn, Facebook, all the places. You can go to